When Ben decided to rescue an abandoned puppy, he had no idea that within a few short months, his entire life would be flipped upside down. He certainly didn't expect to discover that his new companion wasn't a dog at all. To keep the animal, Ben would have to make some serious changes to his comfortable, predictable life in the suburbs. It all started on a crisp autumn afternoon. Ben, a graphic designer working from home, had just run to the local organic grocery store for supplies. As he was loading his reusable shopping bags into the trunk of his Prius, something caught his eye. A beat-up pickup truck parked a few spaces away had a small wire crate in the bed, and inside that crate was a tiny puppy. The little guy looked so sad and forlorn, huddled in the corner with his tail tucked between his legs, that Ben's heart melted instantly. But the pup wasn't just pitiful, he was also incredibly adorable. He had the fluffiest cream-colored coat Ben had ever seen, and a pair of sweet, pleading brown eyes that just tugged at his heartstrings. He immediately felt a connection, a wave of empathy that surprised even him. When the truck's owner finally ambled back, chewing on a piece of straw and adjusting his baseball cap, Ben knew he had to say something. He casually hung around, pretending to check his phone, and then struck up a conversation, asking about the puppy and where he had gotten him. The farmer, a weathered man named Jeb, told a familiar, unhappy story. He explained that the dog had been abandoned near his farm, a sprawling property just outside of town. Jeb and his farm hands had tried to shoo the pup away, but he kept stubbornly returning. A busy highway ran right past their land, and, unfortunately, they often had unwanted animals dumped there by irresponsible people who didn't want them anymore. They couldn't keep them all as much as Jeb's wife wanted to, but they always tried to find them good homes. This particular puppy, however, had gotten on Jeb's bad side. The little guy must have been desperately hungry, missing his mother's warmth and nourishment. He'd followed his nose, driven by instinct in search of food, and ended up inside the chicken coop. The result was a feathered frenzy and a genuine financial loss. He'd killed several chickens, scattering feathers everywhere, and others had died of fright from the chaotic intrusion. Jeb, already struggling to make ends meet with rising feed costs and unpredictable weather, had suffered a significant setback. He just wanted the pup gone, but he couldn't bring himself to simply abandon him on the side of the road. Instead, with a heavy heart, he had planned to take the puppy to the local vet and have him euthanized at a low cost. Hearing this story brought a lump to Ben's throat. He couldn't let the puppy be put down simply because he was alone, hungry, and acting on instinct. The pup was just doing what animals do, trying to survive. He had to do something, anything, to change this little creature's fate. So Ben, acting on pure impulse, offered to take the puppy off Jeb's hands. He was even willing to pay a small sum, enough for Jeb to replace a few of his chickens. In exchange, Ben would get an adorable puppy and perhaps some much-needed companionship in his quiet suburban life. It seemed like a win-win situation, a way to ease Jeb's burden and give the puppy a second chance. Jeb, after a moment of consideration, agreed, but only on the condition that he never saw the dog on his property again. Ben gently scooped up the pup, holding him close to his chest. The little guy's whole body seemed to sag with relief, his tense muscles finally relaxing. He must have been terrified, and Ben was just grateful he'd arrived in time to intervene. Now, however, the reality of his impulsive decision began to sink in. He had a puppy. He hadn't planned on getting a dog, hadn't even considered it. At the moment, he was living in a relatively small, meticulously decorated apartment with no yard, a space hardly conducive to raising an energetic young animal. But he was determined to make it work. He named him Cody, a friendly, all-American name, and the two of them developed an instant, undeniable bond. Ben wasn't sure if it was because Cody instinctively knew that he had been rescued, or if they simply shared a deep, inexplicable connection. Either way, he had never imagined that a dog could so quickly become his best friend, a constant source of unconditional love and goofy entertainment. They had a blast together, playing fetch in the limited apartment space and going for walks in the nearby park. But Ben also quickly realized that he had to make sure Cody got enough exercise, or he'd get restless, bored, and a little destructive. He developed a fondness for Ben's expensive designer shoes, much to Ben's initial dismay. Cody's chew toys were quickly dispatched, while Ben's softest hoodies became his favorite napping spots. Given Cody's boundless energy and playful nature, Ben braced himself for a real challenge when it came to training and managing him on walks. To his surprise, the puppy was remarkably relaxed and obedient. He seemed content to match Ben's pace, trotting happily alongside him as they explored the suburban streets and the walking trails in the nearby park, that is, until he spotted another dog. Then all bets were off. Cody would completely lose his mind, straining at the leash and barking excitedly, desperate to play with every dog he encountered, even the ones that clearly wanted nothing to do with him. It was a genuinely sweet sight, a display of pure, unadulterated enthusiasm, and people would often compliment Ben on his puppy's friendly demeanor. Cody was undeniably a special dog, full of endearing quirks and surprising talents, but there was one increasingly noticeable issue that Ben couldn't quite ignore. Cody simply wouldn't stop growing. As the weeks turned into months, he became absolutely massive. His cream-colored coat grew even thicker and fluffier, and he transformed into a strikingly handsome adult dog. However, his sheer size started to elicit reactions from strangers, a mixture of awe and apprehension. Most people were visibly intimidated by him, crossing the street to avoid passing too closely. Their reactions prompted Ben to question Cody's unusual size. He initially tried to reassure himself that it was normal for a large breed mix, maybe with some Great Pyrenees or Newfoundland in his lineage. But even he had to admit that he was starting to worry. What if Cody had some sort of hormonal imbalance, or a rare genetic condition that was causing him to grow at such an accelerated rate? He was admittedly scared of what the vet might say, but he knew he had to find out what was going on with his best friend. He desperately hoped everything was fine, and that Cody was simply an exceptionally large dog. However, that wasn't what the doctor told him. Ben brought Cody to the vet's office, leading him through the waiting room. The moment the veterinary nurse laid eyes on the animal, she let out a small, involuntary shriek. "Oh my goodness, he's huge!" she exclaimed, her eyes wide with surprise. They quickly ushered Ben and Cody into a private room, clearly concerned that he might accidentally injure another animal or even a human in the confined space. Ben knew Cody would never intentionally hurt anyone, but he didn't argue. At this stage, Cody was only a few months old, yet he was already larger than most fully grown Great Danes or St. Bernards. It was always interesting, and sometimes a little unnerving, to witness people's reactions during their walks, especially when Cody tried to befriend smaller dogs, towering over them like a gentle giant. Ben had to admit that he'd harbored some suspicions that Cody wasn't entirely what he thought he was. He had initially convinced himself that his puppy was perhaps the product of two purebred wolf dogs, a rare but not impossible scenario in their rural adjacent community. But months later, he was about to discover that his sweet, goofy companion wasn't a dog at all. The vet chuckled nervously as he entered the examination room, his eyes fixed on Cody, who was sitting patiently behind Ben, resting his massive head on his shoulder. The big guy just adored his human, that was undeniable, but everything was about to change. The good news, the vet began, was that Cody was incredibly healthy. There was absolutely nothing physically wrong with him. The vet paused, taking a breath before delivering the next piece of information. The other news is that Cody isn't a dog. Ben's eyebrows shot up in disbelief. What do you mean he's not a dog? What else could he be? The vet offered a wry smile. To be specific, Cody is a full Canadian black wolf. There's no domestic dog DNA in him whatsoever. He's 100% wolf. Ben was speechless. A wolf? He had been raising a wolf in his apartment for months, completely oblivious to the truth. How was that even possible? The vet continued. The reason he was abandoned near Jeb's farm remains a mystery. Perhaps his pack left him behind, which is rare but can happen with young or weak pups. Or maybe someone tried to adopt him thinking he was a husky or malamute puppy and realized their mistake. Regardless, his fate became intertwined with yours, Ben. You've unknowingly been raising a wolf pup as a loving pet for months. To say Ben was shocked would be a massive understatement. Aside from the occasional playful nip and a preference for raw meat over kibble, which Ben had attributed to a sensitive stomach, Cody had never shown any signs of aggression, and Ben had never suspected he wasn't a normal dog. Domesticated as he was, there was no way he would ever be able to survive in the wild if Ben were to set him free now. He had grown accustomed to human interaction, regular meals, and the comforts of a warm home. At the same time, Ben couldn't keep treating Cody in the exact same way he would treat a dog. A wolf had different needs, different instincts, and different legal considerations. It wasn't entirely bad news, but it would undoubtedly change their lives forever. The vet informed Ben that he was legally obligated to contact the local wildlife authority and report the situation. He couldn't predict what they would decide to do. Ben lived in a suburban neighborhood, in a house with a relatively small backyard, not an appropriate environment for any wolf, let alone one of Cody's size and energy levels. He was living in close proximity to other houses, walking among people, and playing with pets and children several times smaller than him. Ben knew he had to make some major changes to his lifestyle if he wanted to keep his best friend with him. The thought of losing Cody was unbearable. A few days later, a local wildlife inspector, a woman named Sarah, came out to assess the situation. She would be the one to determine whether to confiscate Cody and relocate him to a sanctuary or a zoo, or to allow Ben to keep him under strict conditions. As soon as she saw Ben and Cody together, interacting with affection and trust, she couldn't deny the amazing bond that the man and the wolf shared. It was clear that they were deeply attached to each other, and she didn't want to be the one to break that connection if she could possibly avoid it. The first and most critical step was to get the wolf out of the suburban neighborhood. Having a wild animal like that in such close proximity to people was simply not safe or responsible. Ben understood completely. He knew he had to find a way to provide Cody with a more suitable environment. Without hesitation, Ben put his house on the market. He sold his place, took all of his assets and savings, and bought a small plot of land a few hours outside the city. The property was mostly wooded, with a large fenced-in area and a small, run-down cabin that he planned to renovate. It was a much more appropriate setting for raising a wolf, offering plenty of space to roam and explore. The inspector had never encountered a situation quite like this before, so she was doing her best to navigate the legal and ethical complexities. Most laws were designed to prevent ordinary citizens from keeping dangerous wild animals as pets. She explained to Ben that he would need to go above and beyond to ensure that Cody could remain in his care. He would need to obtain special permits, build a secure enclosure, and demonstrate that he had the knowledge and resources to provide for Cody's unique needs. Most people would have given up at that point, overwhelmed by the challenges and expenses, but Ben loved Cody like he was his own child and was willing to do anything to keep him. Just picturing Cody going to a shelter or a zoo, never getting his head scratches or belly rubs again, made his blood run cold. It would have been heartbreaking for the wolf, who loved his human too much for them to be separated, and for Ben himself, who couldn't imagine his life without Cody by his side. The land gave Cody more opportunities to run, play, explore the woods, and sniff new scents, but he also needed a secure enclosure, a strong and spacious pen that would keep him safe and prevent him from wandering off and potentially endangering people or livestock. Ben had to get everything ready and up to code, working tirelessly to meet the inspector's requirements. To truly relax, Ben had to overcome one huge obstacle: registering as an animal rescue expert or wildlife rehabilitator to legally keep Cody. To do so, he had to demonstrate the knowledge, skills, and facilities to provide everything a wild animal could need to thrive in captivity. So much had changed in a short time. Ben wanted to share his incredible story with his friends and family, letting them know about the amazing wolf he had rescued and the extraordinary journey they were embarking on together. He started posting videos and photos of Cody on social media, chronicling his transformation from a tiny abandoned puppy to a magnificent full-grown wolf, gradually revealing Cody's true identity to his online audience. People were astounded to find out that Cody was a wolf, but the undeniable bond between man and beast truly shocked and captivated everyone. It was incredible to witness just how close they were, how Cody behaved just like a playful puppy, often trying to nibble on Ben's ears or the hood of his hoodie. Despite his large size and sharp teeth, he never caused Ben any harm. While full of energy and enthusiasm, the moment Ben scolded him, Cody would immediately calm down, responding to his gentle commands, a testament to their deep connection, a bond built on trust and mutual respect. Despite Ben's initial intention to share his joy and inspire others, his social media posts also led to some unexpected consequences. His story went viral almost overnight, as his friends and family shared the cute videos and heartwarming photos on their own channels. Some believed he had made a huge mistake in adopting an animal from a random farmer, putting himself and others at risk. Others wanted to know how he could have been so naive, never suspecting that Cody might not be a dog. Some even thought that he was doing Cody a disservice in keeping him confined, and that he should release him back into the wild, where he belonged. But thankfully, the vast majority of comments came from open-minded, supportive people who understood that Ben only had Cody's best interests at heart. These people were captivated by the story of the regular guy and his stunning wolf, invested in their journey, and eager to see what the two of them were up to day after day. Ben's online following grew massively in just a few weeks, transforming him into an accidental internet celebrity. Ben didn't care about the fame or the attention. His sole focus was on getting the property ready for the final inspection. He had already spent a significant portion of his savings on buying the land and making the initial repairs to the cabin. Now he had to pour the rest of his resources into building a secure and comfortable enclosure for Cody, budgeting carefully and prioritizing the things that were most important for the wolf's well-being. Unfortunately, when Inspector Sarah returned to conduct her final assessment, she didn't think the enclosure was adequate. According to her professional opinion, Cody needed significantly more room to thrive. Ben had been planning on letting him out of the enclosure frequently, taking him for long walks in the woods and playing with him in the fenced-in area, just like they always did. But for the inspector, that wasn't enough. The regulations were clear. The enclosure itself had to meet specific size requirements, regardless of how much time the animal spent outside of it. The inspector made it clear that all the required parameters had to be met, leaving no room for negotiation. It was an all-or-nothing situation. She warned Ben that he only had a few weeks to make the necessary changes, or Cody would be taken away and relocated to a sanctuary.